South Africa has been ranked 72nd from a list of 180 countries as far as perceived levels of public sector corruption. That is according to Transparency International's 2022 Corruption Perception Index. Let's talk about this with the organization's Africa Regional Advisor, Samuel Kaninda. A very good evening to you, sir. Grateful for your time. So is it that anti-corruption measures have stalled, or that the corrupt have simply become better, more sophisticated criminals?
We could say there's a bit of both, and thanks firstly for having me on your program. So there's a bit of both. There's the fact that there's an increasing number of commitments made by our leaders on the continent in Africa, but these commitments are not always followed by, the requisite action to be able to translate those commitments into measures that would curb corruption on the ground in a way that is visible and tangible for the public, and just for it to also reflect in tools of measurement like the CPI. But there's also the fact that corrupt people, or those who are engaged in corruption, are getting more and more sophisticated, which calls for states and other anti-corruption actors to also get up to speed and to, also up their game, so to speak.
And South Africa is 72 from 180 countries. Where are the loopholes? Where are the problems in this country's ability to deal with public sector corruption?
What we've observed in the past few years, there are events, the Zondo Commission that has been, in the news with the state capture issue and very indicative of the collusion that we see between the public sector and the private sector. The public sector being the sector that is supposed to make laws, regulate, but also implement anti-corruption laws. And if there's that collusion that weakens, the ability of the public sector to regulate and clamp down on corruption, this is one key area where corruption manifested itself in the case of South Africa and a number of countries where institutions supposed to clamp down, prevent, detect, prosecute, and even bring those who are corrupt to books have been weakened because of this collusion that I'm talking about.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We talk a lot about government corruption, but it exists side by side, often with the involvement, in fact, of private sector players. In this report, you talk about how the financial sector in this country has been part and parcel of the problem.
Yes, because a number of roles, mainly facilitation roles played by professional bodies like, accountants and lawyers, and these are very respectable professions. But in some cases, we've seen that those who would wish to conceal some of their assets, even including ill-gotten assets, would use the services of some of these professional bodies to be able to escape, we would say, the limelight of, institutions that should know in terms of the financial reporting. In the case of South Africa, there are regulations and requirements of the South African Reserve Bank that would be circumvented. So we see that it's important that these services, the facilitation roles of some, professional bodies that I mentioned, would be better regulated. But what is also key is to close loopholes in terms of international cooperation between various jurisdictions, because we see that it's still possible for actors in the private, even public sector, to be able to open shell companies away from the public eye and the national fiscus of their country and, other financial authorities, and also to be able to conceal their identity when it comes to the ownership of some of these companies and assets. So it's also important then linking it to the issue of making beneficial ownership. So who owns which asset or company more transparent, and it makes it easier to trace and to connect the dots and to be able to also close some of these loopholes which are allowing, corruption to perpetuate, but also making not only South Africa, but the continent as a whole lose all these billions in terms of funding that the continent badly needs for its own development.
Thank you for your time, Samuel Kaninda.
Thank you.